Are you connecting? Yep, you're on the internet.
Thank you. We're going to be on the streaming of the internet. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. I wonder what's DKA, right?
It's such a terrible angle too. Like why? But then you just can't see it. It's still there being a terrible angle behind.
We can't see it. It doesn't exist. Remember, we're 5 years old again. Right on. 5? Younger than that, right? At what point do kids learn that when they see things, they...
I don't know if I'm years older than
Did you really? Or is that just your motherly instinct?
I think so. Who knows? There.
No, right?
I say yes.
So, Lucia?
Yes. Okay.
I don't think we've got time to go through it again, but just so you're familiar with the way this is working.
Yeah.
So, let's click over here, right here. This is what we have.
Okay.
What we're looking at. This is the next one. Click it. And the previous and the next thing.
And this is the notes to the side.
Yep.
Okay.
See?
Perfect.
Yay.
I can do that.
So, I mean, is this streamed or just being recorded for later stuff or what? Yeah, we covered up the screens so that we
so it's not
ourselves.
So I didn't personally do the setup, but as far as I know, it is being streamed on Twitch. We have a couple of Twitch channels going on, and if you don't have those links already, then do you have a preference to not be streamed?
I mean, I don't.
It's just a terrible angle.
Let's move it. Let's make sure everyone looks good and nice.
I always look good.
Yeah.
Hey, how are you?
I'm gonna do a little bit more.
And I'm covering this full
I'm gonna do it so there's like a little bit more like workshop action. Hi. Okay.
Alright.
Amir, are you going to be back over here, or are you going to be at that table? Where are you going to be?
Is that going to catch us?
You see, the camera's right there, so I don't think...
Where do you want to be seating?
Us in the workshop part.
So is that better?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, great.
Probably not sitting Amir right in front of the camera.
Yeah. Go sit next to Reese.
This one is. I'm sorry. Let me.
And Amir, do you have tissue? What's your tissue that you have?
Wow. Amir. I'm making this out.
Yes.
I've never done this ever again.
I don't even know why you're drinking in the first place.
What am I rating me on this too? Like, how do you expect me to come to this thing when I've never done it before? And like what?
I'll probably go ahead and close the door in like 3 minutes if that's cool with you all.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's 2.
Thanks. I'm glad you found it. I'm glad that's what it looks like.
Treat it seriously. I'm just stuck. I don't know why it's not.
Living room, I'll probably I might do this thing be like I'm all.
In terms of our time, does it mean for about 7, 8 minutes, and then 10 minutes, and then the rest of the time is just going to be workshop. We're going to let people.
Yeah.
Great, and I'll probably just go through and tell you
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the workshop part has coffee time, a few minutes.
That's the point, right? I mean, it's games. If it's not fun, so why is it
I can also be very sweet, like everybody should get together.
very sweet.
Like, should be.
You got together like a wig.
Yeah. Okay, I'm shutting down. You know what? I guess I just set myself up for that. But like, I can also tell people to sit in a certain way. Okay, so
No.
Just don't.
well, it's a tough order, but I'm gonna try.
We had water.
You want it back there. At least I think that's good.
Alright. Sorry, you're not.
Your wife is the one closer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do an obligatory formal introduction. Alright, awesome guys, hope y'all are liking different games. We're gonna go ahead and leave it with you two.
Thank you. That was awesome. My name is Rocio Rayo,
I'm Dylan Shad.
and we're going to be presenting about games for educators. So just a little bit of background about who we are. We came together in 2011 to write a book for Hostos Community College's new game design program. We found that many of the textbooks were really weren't engaging for our students, and so our students weren't reading them, and they had a lot of applicable, good, great information in them, but because our students just could not engage with them because of vocabulary or remedial English, things that sort of were barriers for them, they just didn't open it. They didn't read past the first few lines. So we decided to get together and write our own textbook. So we did that in 2011. And it was the Hive Cooperative's Einstein and the Honeybee, an introduction to game design and game development. And so we illustrated it. We took a manuscript that Professor Shad wrote and rewrote and edited and came up with this beautiful book. During that year, Shad and another professor, Catherine Cannon, received a National Science Foundation grant that tried to assess the way that remedial math and intro science were taught, especially for folks at Hostos Community College, where we have a huge bilingual population. So it's not only about teaching math concepts, but it's about teaching vocabulary and English. So you're not only having to learn the language of math, but you're also having to learn English at the same time. And so people, many of our students have to take remedial classes more than once. And over 80% of our students come in having to take some sort of remediation. So we worked with Hostos Community College, the media design program there, and the National Science Foundation to design 20 plus games to assess specific learning outcomes. And those learning outcomes came from a variety of professors that were interdisciplinary. So we had math professors, science professors, designers, and education professors who focused primarily on problematic learning outcomes. So semester in and semester out, what are the problems that students always have in these classes? And we developed games to focus on those. So for example, the Punnett Square. So we came up with a game called Zombie Apocalypse that addressed the Punnett Square. And the narrative is that there's only this purple flower that when you eat it, the zombies won't get you, and so you have to come up with the purple flower. And it's sort of based loosely on spit, and it gets really loud, and there's lots of slamming and collecting bets, and it's a lot of fun, but they end up being able to recognize very easily and quickly the Punnett Square. And then another one of the student learning outcomes was rounding to the tenths and hundredths place. So we came up with double cross, where we have a 10-sided die where we drilled a decimal in it, either in the tenths or the hundredths place, And depending on what you roll and you round up or down, you move across the board and practice rounding. Then another one was number line. So figuring out negative numbers in a visual way proved to be much easier than trying to teach an abstract concept of negative numbers. So we made a number line game where you move forward and back based on a spinner and die. And so we found that this, especially for our intro, our sort of lowest level remedial math, this is the first game that we play. And it gets them really excited about something that when they walked in the classroom, they already felt like they failed at. Many of our students walk into the classroom saying, I can't do math. I'm never going to pass this. First day of class. Haven't even met the professor, haven't done any sort of lessons yet, and they can't do it. So we give them this game, and by the end of it, they're starting to understand negative numbers. And so their idea about their relationship with math changes. So our games were successful, and we began presenting them to a variety of conferences and other educators in K through 12, and people were really excited. And we thought, oh, well, this may be something. We're onto something. This is things that we're excited about and we like doing as educators and game designers and as a group that had been working together writing the textbook and then coming up with these games. And so we figured, let's incorporate. Let's try to do this. Let's try to make this official. So we did. And then we started looking for fundraising, and we realized that because we were so closely affiliated with Hostos Community College, funders were very confused about who we were. Were we a part of the school? Were we our own separate entity? And we really wanted to create a name for ourselves, but that didn't, that wasn't in contrast to the mission at Hostos, but rather reinforced it. So we changed our name to Comina Design. And we've done that since we submitted our proposal, which is why we are still the Hostos Hive on the program. So sorry about that confusion. So here we are. This is the team at our launch party, and we are really excited to be here presenting about games for educators. Teaching through play. So if there's any teachers in here, the idea of having to do one more thing in the classroom, one more day, plan for one more lesson seems daunting, and it's a chore because we already have enough to do that we can't ever possibly get done in a day. And so often when we start talking about teaching through play, educators sort of get a gloss look over and they think, I'm not going to be able to do that too. I'm already trying to do too much. But what we found, if we can get them just in the classroom and let us try it out, is that students are overwhelmingly more engaged when they're playing, even students who don't necessarily self-identify as gamers. So for students who are like, maybe gaming isn't necessarily my favorite thing, introduce a game in the classroom and they will be engaged in a different way. One of the professors that we've worked with for the last 3 or 4 years described teaching through play as a way to tap into resources and energy that students who are already overwhelmed with a specific subject wouldn't have tapped into before. So doing math homework, doing 150 problems of math homework, if you don't already like math or you already feel like you're failing in math, isn't something they're going to want to do. But playing a game about math that you could win at and that you haven't already lost does feel like something that's fun and engaging. And if we found that if we can just get the students to stick it out in class and to not drop the first couple of weeks, we have a really high success rate in getting students to finish classes and having their attitudes about the subject change. Even if they don't necessarily pass the final test, they take it again and then they feel like they can do it. And it's really been a profound difference with our students who now talk about being able to succeed in math when last semester they had walked into the first day thinking that they had already failed. So we spent a lot of time trying to figure out with professors how we could not only create games that reinforced their lectures, but how to actually incorporate games in the classroom to teach. So it's much different designing a game that sort of is a study aid rather than a game that is actually teaching something. So it replaces the lecture. And that's what we're presenting about today. So there are three sort of levels to teaching through play that we are going to highlight. And the first one is vocabulary and meanings. So teaching folks like this is the vocabulary you need to understand what we're teaching. And as a educator at Hostos, where more than half of my students in every class, English is their second language, it's really important to think about vocabulary first and just meanings of words. And these are the tools you need to get to the next step. And then the next level are algorithms and calculations. So what's the system of the concept? What is this concept in relationship? How is this concept in relationship to other concepts you have learned? Is there a relationship? Is it building off of something that you've found in weeks before or in other classes or maybe even another class? Is there a formula that we can teach? Is there a formula that we can figure out how to tell the student? And would that be helpful for the student? And then you have larger abstract ideas and abstract concepts. So, for instance, the scientific method, vocabulary and meanings. You need to know what a hypothesis is. That's vocabulary. You must teach that. You must know what it means to observe something. You must know what it means to present a theory, right? And then the algorithms and calculation would be the scientific method. And these are the ways that you do that. And the abstract concept is just sort of the larger, what it means to present a theory, what it means to prove something. And so this is one way that we've found that works in terms of breaking down larger student learning outcomes. In order to address these three topics, we decided to develop modules in a template form for educators to use. And that's what we're here to present to you today.
All right, so once again, I'm Shad. I'm the lead concept developer at Colmena. And I'm going to tell you about the template that we've been working on this winter to help educators more easily create games for their curriculum. So games are systems, as we should all know since we're at a game conference. But everything else is a system too. Everything we teach are systems. We teach systems of language, we teach systems of math, systems of physics, of chemistry. Everything that we teach is a system. So previously at Colmena, really what we've been doing is we've started designing games by identifying the system that we want to teach, and then looking at that system and examining it and figuring out where it would be most educational and most interesting and fun and engaging to let users manipulate that system, to give them a better familiarity with how it works. And then we do cleanup work with the system. We remove excessively complex or just unnecessary pieces of it, and boom, we've got a game. I mean, there's a few more steps involved, of course, but that's the basic structure of how we've been approaching game design for education. And this is relatively easy for us at this point. We've been doing it now for a couple of years, but just because it's easy for game designers, it's not necessarily an easy thing for educators. Educators, when you're teaching something, you want to be teaching the system as it is. You want to be teaching the facts. You don't really want to be thinking about how it could be different. It's not useful for you to be thinking about how it could be different, but that's really necessary as a game designer for the game designer to be doing. So educators, they can often end up being uncomfortable manipulating the system or talking about manipulating the system. So really the most basic objective of our template is to bridge these two worlds, to really make it easy for educators to create a game from their individual curriculum that utilizes gameplay that supports an understanding of the subject, as opposed to just be randomly associated with it. When we began, the first thing we needed was a structure that could be applied universally across disciplines, because we wanted a template that could be used for a large variety of subjects and systems. And so we were looking around, and the most common educational game format you find is the flashcard game. This is because of a large number of reasons, but among them, flashcards are often the closest thing that traditional education gets to being game-like. I mean, let's be honest. There's a big reason also why Trivial Pursuit and other such quiz games are so popular. They're simple, and the system can remain completely separate from the content. Flashcard games reduce game systems to their core, which is objective, obstacle, and solution. And this minimalist approach really enables the system to wear any number of skins, which is something that we want, but we don't like flashcard games. They're too close to quizzes. They're not really a whole lot of fun, which is incredibly important in this game, and they don't really represent the subject very well. But at the same time, there's something we learned from that simplification and that ability to reskin. So we also were looking at what our students are playing, and we find them for hours in the cafeteria playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering and Pokemon, and they love their collectible card games. In these games, there's a lot to them, but one of the things that happens in every single one of them is that they come down to collecting cards from your deck to put into play that increase your capacity to overcome obstacles within the game. So we decided to tap into their love of these kinds of systems to better engage the audience. Specifically, that mechanic right there we wanted to play with. So we built a card game. Over the course of play in our game, or in our system rather, players collect cards that expand their capacity to interact with the game system. These can be thought of as the abilities or items that you often find in RPGs and other classic game systems. And every turn, an encounter card is drawn that outlines that turn's objective. These are sort of like quiz questions in a lot of ways, except for one really key fundamental difference. The means by which they're answered is not the same. The encounter can only be overcome by players carefully combining their collected ability cards. It can only be overcome by combining the ability cards. This can be done either individually by the player drawing the encounter, or it can be done collaboratively, which is actually encouraged through the game system through resource management. You only have a certain number at any given time for you to play with, so if you team up with other people around the table, you're more likely to be able to answer the objective. Also, where there's collaboration, we like to throw in disruption. So players are also able to modify the encounters that other players are facing, making them more difficult. But at the same time, in doing so, they're also making that encounter more rewarding should the player actually overcome it. So how is this creating gameplay that supports an understanding of the subject? Well, first off, this is just an overarching framework for a bunch of different subjects to tap into. But what it does is immediately provide a system that is simultaneously familiar to both the educator and the student, and yet it's very, very forcibly different. Each subject has a different system, too. So as I mentioned, systems of language, systems of math, and the means by which the ability cards combine to overcome an encounter is based upon the specific discipline that it falls under. So let me show you a bit of what we're talking about. I know that was kind of weird and vague and theoretical. So this is an example of the system. This is this is one of our working prototypes that we were working with a few weeks back. So Colmena has done a lot of work with the STEM subjects. So for our first implementation of the system, we wanted to try something that wasn't STEM, so we went with lit. So for this, we're assuming the students have just read the short story The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. The system in literature is English and more specifically grammar. So this is a system that's basically the communication of ideas by putting together words into coherent sentences. So you can see all the ability cards here are words. And therefore, also the encounters, which you can't see yet, are questions asked about the text that are being answered by the words. So a note about the objectives here. We're working with factual questions, so we're not yet dealing with discussion. We have on the books after this a version of the template that's geared more towards creating discussion and conversation around the table in class, but this is really more about, this is instead of, I guess, the quizzes that you would face when you come into class that check whether or not you read it. But let's go back to the game though. Here we can see Dielka, Elijah, and Chris all seated around playing a game of the lottery. Each of them they've got word cards in their hands, as I mentioned, and we're gonna just assume it's Dielka's turn. So she's gonna first overturn an encounter card. This card says, where do the characters gather? For everyone who hasn't read The Lottery, the characters in the story gather at the town square. And the Dielka has the card square over here, but that doesn't form a complete sentence. So since we're utilizing the system of grammar, we want to be reinforcing the system of grammar, specifically because our students have ESL issues. We have people who aren't perfect in their grammar, and we want to be fixing that. Or at least reinforcing their strengths there. They need to put together a full sentence. So they need at least a subject and a verb. So Dielka has the cards to answer this, which just went up to the top of the screen. So she has a third person plural, so they, the verb to gather, a wildcard preposition, and a noun, which is the square. So she can say, they gather in the square. Chris, however, didn't get any points last turn, so he's feeling a bit petulant, and he's going to try modifying the challenge in hopes of making it too difficult for Dielka. He's going to throw down the and challenge modifier card, thus making it so that Dielka has to include this in her answer. That's how these work. They basically, in the literature version, these are all things that force the player to give a more descriptive or more specific or more complex answer. Things like and because and so that and therefore. As I said, though, this adds to the value of everything. Yeah, so many educational games, they don't like disruptive play. They try to cut it out. But while it's definitely something that needs to be handled incredibly delicately, and we're still really working through to make sure that this is what we want it to, we ultimately feel that it's really important to encourage dialogue and collaborative play. And a big part of that is getting people butting heads and trying to push back and forth in one way or another. So, I mean, conversations and debate type situations, these require two sides by definition. But anyway, Dielka can't answer the question anymore. So she's going to turn to Elijah for help, and this is where we really think things get interesting, the collaboration in the system. Because players now have to get very creative with how they structure their answers. They have to move away from the obvious, which is they gather in the square, which might be what you would write down on a quiz, and they have to think about what else from the text they can use, what else they can draw from. They have to go back and think about what they read in a whole new way. And we're enabling this in part by leveraging the power of recognition. So there are two types of memory. There's recall and recognition. And if recall is the capacity to picture the face of someone you met last night, Recognition is the ability to pick them out of a group in a photo. So most quiz scenarios, they rely on recall. They rely on you remembering information without clues. Like this. I don't know how many of you have seen the blue books, but there isn't anything in here to tell you what the answer might be. It's just write your answer. I hate them. Yeah, so if you can recall something, it does indicate a certain level of learning, but it's ultimately the weaker of the two forms of memory. And because of that, it's a lot more prone to inducing panic in students, which isn't something a game should ever do, at least not an educational game. Students, we feel, are at the peak of their game when they're confident, and to help them do that, we're not relying on recall. We give our players, through their collected word banks, their hands of words, points of recognition. But the word banks are limited, and so players have the most powerful tool set when they collaborate. So everyone around the table has a reason to pitch in, because they share in the rewards. But not necessarily all of them can, and Chris certainly tried to do the opposite of help. Every card put down to answer the challenge has a point value, which it's kind of light on this, but you can see there's a number behind each card. When the encounter is solved, everybody gets some of these points. These are split between everybody. In addition to this, whenever you answer an encounter right, you get more item cards. You expand your hand. You expand your ability to answer more questions. And these cards can be traded or bartered in order to get people to help you. So you've also got that if people aren't willing to do it just for the points. But let's get back to the game. So Dielka is turning to Elijah for help, and they discuss alternative means of answering the question. So in the square, they think about it, or rather, in the lottery, they think about it, and they remember that the square is also described in where it is. They describe it as being between the post office and the bank. So they no longer have to say the square. They just say the villagers gather between the post office and the bank. And that's another thing. Elijah has some cards here that are worth more points than what Dielka had, so they swap them out so that they can all get more points. Look, that was not what I meant to do. Yeah, so in this way, what we've really done is we've encouraged them to think more deeply about the reading, to push further, and to be collaborating. Specifically, to quickly go into how the points get dealt, because we're about to do a workshop on this stuff. The way that we're doing it right now is that the person who, or everybody who put in cards, get their cards value, or get their cards point values added to their score. In addition, if you're the person who whose turn it is, you also get the point value that everybody else put in. So Dielka would get 2, 5, 7, 9 points here, and Elijah, who added, I think, the bank and villagers townfolk, would get 4. So that's. Don't worry, you don't have to remember that too well, but that's just an example of how that works. And now we're going to move on to the workshop.
Yeah, so we're really excited about having folks come up with their own games in this time. So using our template and sort of using, first picking out a reading or a specific learning outcome. So we thought that we'd split up between maybe English and literature and history. We also, along with the lottery, developed a working version for Letters from Birmingham Jail, which I'm teaching in my Intro to Philosophy class. And I'm super excited about playing with them when we get back from spring break. So it's we're using for history, philosophy, literature, maybe splitting up in that way. If there's some STEM folks, science and math, We also have a working version for teaching functional groups. And so the challenge becomes alkaline, and the sentence is the various components with single, double bonds, carbon, and oxygen.
There's a bunch of them.
There's a bunch of them. Good. I'm teaching Intro to Philosophy, not organic chemistry this semester. So can we get up and move around? Who wants to? Are there any English people? Who wants to do English? Okay, so let's come up here for English folks. Maybe sit here. We have some supplies. We're going to get crafty. We love being crafty. And then history folks. Any history, philosophy? Yep. Let's go over here to do history, philosophy maybe. And then science and math folks. Any science and math folks? Okay, let's stay back there. Since y'all are already
Agreed. That was great.
And so the first thing that we want folks to think about is what's a reading, a specific reading. Can you hand out those markers at the back tables? A specific reading for my English and history and philosophy people. Like what's a reading that people have either problems with or it's hard to get people engaged with. So for instance, I picked Letters from Birmingham, The Lottery, both readings that I really like to think about. So think about a reading that we're going to focus on. Talk amongst yourselves.
Everybody. Hi, I'm Kat. Hello. Hi, Sean.
Hi, I'm Deidre.
Yes, that's why I brought him.
I don't know. What is the audience?
The problem is your friends though is once you finish the fifth book, you've got the first one.
My friend did read every single book.
Yeah, babe.
I did pretty fun one.
Same time.
Okay, cool. So I lead this functional group because we teach environmental science, and it's one of the first things
Does anyone have
that
any thoughts?
freaks the students out. And so I'm excited to actually bond readers about them. Also, students should check out.
Yeah, just to confirm, like,
So,
round
what are some
the
student learning
sort of
outcomes?
effective to cover here? Is there like a source we need to cover?
I mean, it's on.
Right.
So,
Right.
especially
Exactly.
Can't think of what I wrote, like,
And it's the teaching from the beginning. Exactly. When the lab, we make sure that the lab that is taught is the same colors. So carbons are C, and oxygen
Romeo and
is
Juliet.
Everybody does.
I think most Shakespeare put it together dramas, but I'm willing to go with Romeo and Juliet. I still more.
Yeah, but
Yes.
nice reading.
So I don't know if you guys.
Yeah, this is the part
I mean,
that.
I know some art students have a lot of.
Yeah.
Okay, so we gotta.
Obviously, it's
So,
language.
So,
Which would.
So,
Can we do a quick plot summary?
either a conflict that needs to be resolved, it could
You
be.
mean for ourselves?
Are you guys all?
For ourselves, so that way we
Yeah,
can.
so we have something to work from,
Yeah.
Pieces of the system
it was the second copy they did.
on to create solutions, and the encounter is what that is supposed to be creating. So, with, I'm just gonna push this really easy.
Awesome.
Just
the
with, science, as she was saying, that would be like
thought will create this kind of a, let's say, molecule, and then these are all the pieces, like the abilities are all the pieces.
Wow, that's
that you have
really long.
together.
Yeah.
Well, that's what
Okay. There's the like that
because
rapidly heating.
Okay.
So I'm like,
it's the dude.
Let's do that then.
okay.
Or West Side Story.
History is this happened this time.
Like in general.
Alright, so quick and dirty plot summary of
They fall in love, they're forbidden, they get together anyway.
Yeah.
Causality and.
So where you come into your major plot variables.
The actual.
Okay.
That was question, not a.
I'm talking to the science teacher about using.
Basic level, and the same with English, moving away from that sort of thing, because we all like to see, so it's more about causality, like what events cause or what. Not like what happens.
So,
Interpretation.
or even just like,
Yeah,
you teach each
That's why they want to work on your own.
how are you all doing?
We're doing Romeo and Juliet.
Awesome.
Okay, and.
But then another way of looking at it also,
what learning out there is
reading, you also get to see a lot of things. Awesome.
Wedding.
Yeah.
That's probably not your one.
Not for this yet.
That's
There's a lot of applications.
Also by
Actually, we come back and
I'm an education game designer.
Okay, fantastic. So what learning outcomes are you focusing on Romeo?
So this kind of card game is
When I did that, what I did was major plot. We can also do vocabulary.
Scissors and stick and some
Students are working with immersion in English, so people study what they can
studies and it helps you reinforce it
or they think they're working with the version of English.
even if
So I guess-
index cards, building
So,
something.
so in playing with the vocabulary, you can be having, you can have them describe these words in full sentences, right? Which is kind of an easy step off from where we left off with a lot of the stuff that we played on in this.
So, yeah,
And then, of course, major
And to
plot
see that
events.
change.
When you start talking about the larger issues, that's when you get to a second tier kind of version of this that involves really much more instigation and conversation happening between teams. Which is wonderful. As an educator, we want that. We want that. But it can also be unruly, as you've experienced, I'm sure. So, remember that I wasn't supposed to do anything here. I'm just coming over because you were saying you guys were alone.
That's what we have.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
They've got Romeo and Juliet, they've got vocabulary as well as plot events.
that we can represent it.
Okay.
So what you want to do in the art?
What really sounds like so what are the questions that we ask about the text?
There's more cards.
Or like, are you working
Okay, so
specifically
code,
with the play as written
Here's
or
the
the play as
problem.
performed?
Okay, you're looking for like, here's the problem.
Okay.
Steve down.
All the we just kind of demoed
Okay, so
how the system would work. So you would next look at the counter to try to figure out what the questions are, what the important questions are, what the aspects. Remember, you want to focus on things that have a right versus a wrong answer, as opposed to discussion questions. Which
vocabulary and
I think
Where like
we add
I'm looking here, and one of the things about the encounters is
and from that, you might be kind of figuring out what kinds of words they need. So we just create the answers to this question.
Can you talk a little about why you why working on lenses?
Okay.
Then we get to what I'm kind of
For us, the big thing was that we wanted to have one or the other. It's mostly due to the fact that if with this system as it is, every answer then turns into a full discussion. No one's going to get one or two answers. They're not going to actually just play a game. So, yeah.
So you could.
Three more minutes.
Straightforward why? Like why does Romeo like him?
There isn't enough.
That's doable. But why are these families never going to get along? Or what do these families represent in the greater social dynamic than being able to?
The other thing is because it was after that, it's really hard to create the abilities to answer that because if you're going to be pulling in choices that
So really conversation was how can I keep this manageable to an educator and painless to create this game. So it's really going to plug people in. And so at this point, we just got really excited. A lot of people just start putting in the questions and challenge. Lots of answers were crossing everything those and then filing them into the now.
Hi! My name is Dee. What's your name? Hi, Amir.
Nice to meet you. Nice to
And
meet you.
let's plug that in. Let's just plug in the answers.
Okay, thank you.
Can you print them up, cut them up?
I'm sorry, what are you sick with?
I get sick from my allergies.
Let's say you want to start playing.
It's like everything's just
Once they start seeing how the
but I cannot breathe. At night I feel like I'm stuck
they start
on the floor.
developing.
Oh my god.
That's what I feel. I take like more medicine the next day. It gets
I'm the guy that wrote the book with them.
It's okay.
I'm supposed to be
the only thing that happens to me in the summer is that like for me in the summer
Again, how do we translate those?
I'm like 16 months. Like 5
But just use the word. Yeah, right. Yeah,
that I have
very cool. Yeah.
And then that, whatever words repeating.
Yes.
You do like the
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Is he developing a new rocket ship?
Well, just what to do about mosquitoes, you know? Just how can you...
You know all these folks in chikungunya, so it's a good one, yes.
What's your favorite time of the year then? Summer? Even though it's all the bugs, you like the weather? Or what do you like about summer?
It's my favorite.
Right.
My favorite
What's your favorite animal?
what likes me?
Lizard? Snake?
Every type of reptile.
Make a computer screen.
Reptiles are so... I really like them. I think they're really pretty. They're really cool too, yeah. Sorry, am I in your way?
No, I'm just checking this to make sure that nobody's wearing anything on green.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for being here, but like in the deck.
He's colorblind. You can't tell.
Your shoelaces are tied?
English language.
That would be different.
I was thinking, oh, we need to constrain our answers for everything.
That represents what they see when they go to their house.
Actual physical.
Different set of skills.
Why because they are so smart for having a shell. Like students don't know
They don't remember how to
what
set up.
might be
Okay.
on balance.
Like,
Because
right
STEM
now,
turtles
header.
like
you know,
really
and-
hard.
Are there
And
any cards
that
aren't?
One
Like,
is-
I could see those
one
as
is-
like,
Yes.
Answer distraction types.
Things like pronouns.
And it goes T.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
The one is
At least.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Which was your favorite? My second favorite.
My second favorite is Leo.
Probably so.
Leo's my favorite.
My third
Also,
favorite
And also in a low tech environment, you want to you can't be like, test this out.
just like cards that kind of
For a lot of places.
I don't know. It's probably like rap. It's probably like rap. My last favorite is Mikey.
So think about try to
The reason why I put Mikey last is because he's the funniest. He's like the one that episodes. They're like.
Oh, Romeo,
There's one of the episodes. Donnie introduces the turtles, and the two other turtles are like Raph, Leo, and then Mikey also
I'm not giving up.
Hey,
how's it going?
And then I'm like,
You want the structure,
Especially in the
makes
thing that's perfect.
They like it.
it's just another
If
chance
there's too much
to teach
instruction,
them.
then the person
you cannot teach it.
No, we're gonna keep covering it.
They're too dumb.
Everyone wants to be
Your hand has you must be somebody who's
somebody's going to
What scissors?
Yeah.
So you're going to be looking back at it. It's something we actually don't want to
There.
work.
She says,
I know because
I want to try.
what's
That's part of the introductory.
It is not in nor sitting nor on nor fishing. Where's this part? What's in a name? What's in a name?
Alright guys, so time check, we should be thinking about 5 encounters now. Hopefully, 5 encounters. Go.
And also the other thing is like a game like this could be part of it. Well, which is like, okay, well, we're learning about something, right? Or it could be a standalone play.
I like the idea of standalone just because, I don't know.
Yeah.
When we pointed to one thing,
Layla this morning woke up and just found
I feel like if you just have, like you reinforce the idea in its own environment.
all this blue and purple.
Then you have
But what it shouldn't be.
get them to follow
Which way to go with you?
it's like something at a time.
Yeah.
I can't see it all over. You have younger, do you see these sticking out when I sit down?
Mine's on,
Yeah.
Is it sticking out?
Yeah, references.
yeah, like these blocks that are like
That would be a good one.
Not being the shit.
yeah, like turtles. Yeah.
It's a
cool
I'm an old man, what these classes are for distance. So I put it on and everything gets really,
right, because it's just like a prompt.
How would
I
that
usually, I think it's a prompt,
how would be the challenges that
well, except twice, yeah, that's not helpful, don't do that. I would just say this, squeeze this. Okay, now, you see anything between the fingernails?
Oh, this is beautiful.
It is, isn't it? That's the skeletal design of a diamond. High five.
That's gorgeous.
Man is awesome.
Well, I don't know, I think there are
You guys did great.
Yeah.
and I think we can instead of like present them in modules.
It says reshad is awesome.
Like do a forward
What's this?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No. Okay, see, it's gonna happen.
Under that has commands in order and so you can just say repeat the following and it's not about the exact same task okay, about okay, I have this structure, I can put anything I want here now.
Okay, I did work on it. Yeah, and I think it's okay also.
By Amir is awesome.
We're not trying to listen. I think facts are
School.
Okay, so
As we're thinking about encounters, think about the skills and abilities you're going to need in order to work with those encounters or solve those encounters or
What are the pieces that need to be put together in order to create the thing that is asked for in the encounter?
Check to see if a number is above or below something.
yeah. So okay, so I think one is
Above or below.
yeah. Sort. I was thinking about sorting. How hard is
Sorting is really I think that's what like bubble sorting.
Think of bubble sort, right? No, the combine a bunch of variables into.
But if it's abstract,
Let's just put it down. We need 5.
Or like it like you could,
No.
something it doesn't have to be like a sort variation. Sorting list of what n does not say
Sorting is way too hard.
But it's
What about
Hello world.
That probably would have happened.
Just print.
It keeps on licking my
Stop it,
Literacy.
Because literacy emerges in
Stop with the picture.
One more.
proper.
How about
Yeah, exactly.
Good.
This is actually just
the creative explosion is
Cool. So that's when you give your mom.
plagiarism.
Do these encounters.
Yeah, we're not
I feel like they're like there definitely should be.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Like, plagiarism.
Wait, do that again. Just keep on doing it tight. Just keep on doing it tight.
Why?
No, you gotta stay doing it.
Why?
Like this. Like keeping me in it. Like
Why?
a chain.
Why?
Try to struggle through get your like this. Hold on, don't act.
I'm thinking I know, that's why I wasn't doing it before. You told me to do it.
You get points for
You saying
doing
that I should stop? Hopefully to pass out.
No, keep on doing
No.
it.
Yeah. Process.
And it's just incredible. Very confident.
So yeah, like +1 and -1.
I love the quality.
Variable. We can maybe just say X.
Acoustic
I don't know if that's.
acoustic tiles.
I mean, we can get them in outliners first and then figure out.
That's why it's not
Yes.
allowed.
Right.
And you're, no,
Right.
The blast. What's going on? You gotta be very quiet.
Yeah.
When to always be very quiet. Never laugh. Whatever you do. Ouch, you
Like,
okay?
figure this out. If it's this way, it's true. If this way, it's false.
Once we have our encounters and our abilities and skills, let's start making cards with the cards on the table and the Sharpies.
Okay.
Make them cards.
I was imagining this you can write in.
Oh, good. I'm glad you put an arrow because I wasn't sure.
Well, because my name's on it, so I did.
Cool. So we have variables, operators, increment, decrement, print, boolean, what else are we gonna need? If,
like that kind of thing. How you're gonna check whether they're
else, comparators. Count from 1 to 10, compare variables, sort, print.
So it'd be like a who.
Printing only even numbers.
Well,
Oh, wait.
You could just say variable. You need to actually know what the numbers. You just set a variable to 0 and then just say variable.
Because we just did it in the
There's so many ways.
Don't sound.
Nice.
You guys are like modulus. Right.
Yes, you are. Sorry, that hurts. Okay, wait, open it up again. I'm trying again. See if I can make it hurt more.
So like they'll have cards that
What? Tell me good points if I can make it hurt more?
Yes.
I mean, maybe if we print all the
Oh,
world.
dude. They're too much fun.
Every time you say
So how's the guitar going? Are you playing or are you still playing doing the guitar class or have you dropped out?
I didn't do the guitar class
You do or you don't?
Yeah, so this is like
until
colors, man.
When do they tell you to?
I
What is
don't
that?
know.
I don't get it.
Only when they tell my mom.
So you haven't had a guitar class yet?
No.
What? All that
So,
time you
like-
had the guitar? I thought they saw your guitar and they were all impressed. So where are they now?
They're at boys' school.
And when do you go back? When do you use voice? That hurts kind of like this would hurt. Right. Could actually break you and pull out your little heart.
It started hitting me.
So is this enough for the
Your heart
count?
just died.
Do we need more?
Your chest.
Do you want to start with this and then we can replace this?
Look at your beautiful face. Oh, it's so nice to have a flexible face.
Keep on doing that. Keep on doing that.
It's kind of gross.
I want
Drool you. Is that what friends say to friends, really? Hey, friend, I promise I won't drool on you. So cool.
Do we want to make cards?
Yeah.
Billy Addison was the
Cutting
second
cards
grade.
out, so like variable sticks out.
Got my hand, but it was and I couldn't tell him to stop because I didn't really like how to. I was like too socially awkward. And finally, just heard so much that I screamed in the middle of a class. I started crying, and they were like, it completely freaked everybody out because I did like really quiet. And so they were like, There's always Billy Addison had been slamming my knuckles with pencils. Let's try not to do that again. Okay? Billy Addison now lives in California, so Hollywood movie guy.
Which way do you want to go?
Yeah, that's what I was like.
That's okay. But it's funny because it's kind of, you ever had the doctor with the little hammer? You ever seen him do it though?
What do you need?
Yeah, but your foot kicks out involuntarily. You're not trying to. It's like an action. Like if you put your knee right here, it gets magnetic right there, the right spot. Your knee just goes like this, right? Well, that's the same thing that was just happening in my hand. When you do that, my fingers began doing that. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't know. It's her mom. She says ooh just like when she walks by. Like, hi, ooh.
Alright guys, so about 4 minutes to wrap up crafty time. And then we're gonna present our games to each other.
Okay.
Yay!
Alright, let's use the card. We only have 5 minutes.
Will you stop spinning?
You today would drool on me, you would lick my fingers. I talk and spit a little bit and you give me a hard time. Really, after all the that's come out of your face onto my car and the blood come out of your cheek when I was, obviously beating you up, but still, it's not good to draw people when you get yeah, right now it's making my fingers like little electric shocks go on my fingers because I think it's like there's some kind of spot right in there. Let me see. Give it to me. Let me see.
This is gonna hurt.
Yeah, a little bit. Okay.
Ow!
So it's like right there. You feel it? It's like something back down here. It's like there must be some nerve center. That's gross. It's like it's a scene from the Untitled.
Oh, open your hand. Open your hand.
It's alive! It's alive! Okay. So.
Printing something and then printing only even numbers. Right now, and then we're which are like different literal parts of it. And then put together like that.
I would accept like different games like questions that we want to bring up. Yeah, no, I just feel bad. I feel like I'm not trying to be
Best thing you can always know. The rule number one in life is to love yourself. Love me.
Alright, we have about 5 minutes left for our workshop. Are we ready to talk about our designs? I think that's a no. 5 minutes.
This entire setup is much fun. Yeah, this is legit.
Our basic elemental things.
It's really funny.
Alright folks, we have about 5 minutes left. So we'd love to hear about some of the concepts that you guys came up with. Who wants to go first? Do I have to pick one?
Yes. Wow, we're back in high school.
I felt very much like, do I have to call on someone? Okay. No volunteers, you sure?
So we're still you don't necessarily need to have a complete, fully functioning game right now.
Obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
We only had like, what, a half hour?
Yeah.
But I think it would be really nice to hear how you guys approached it, what you guys did, and
ideas that you have and feedback and comments about the guide. So, I'll let y'all go first.
Oh man.
I know it's because you have all this artwork up here too that I'm very interested in
I
hearing
get it.
about.
It's illegible, therefore artwork. Oh, am I speaking now? 'Cause I
So
said
we
things.
both do. We will stand up like awkward peoples.
Sweet.
So our game is a variant of this card game to teach pseudocode, or target audience of middle schoolers. The encounters are a series of sort of tasks you might want to do programmatically. Not all of these are counting from 1 to 10, comparing two numbers and determining which one is larger, exchanging values if one is larger than the other in a sorted list, printing like hello world, and printing only the even numbers in from a certain range. And so then the abilities you have are operators like adding and subtracting. We have these cool cutouts.
Nice.
Adding and subtracting, looping, while loops. You can iterate through a series of things. Build the true-false cards to see if things are true or false, and output, and then comparisons like less than, greater than. And then what we're hoping to do here is sort of break away from the jargony part of the code, which is like, oh, it looks like gobbledygook, you've never done it before. But nevertheless reinforce that structure is important, which we were hoping to do by these the way the cards like have to fit together in certain ways, like with the little things. So your syntax is forced, even if you didn't know it. And finally, we wanted to have encounters that were very open-ended, so there's a ton of different ways you can do them. And then for a scoring mechanic, it would be the less steps you can do it in, the more points your solution ends up getting. Rather than like the more crap you put on the board, the better it is. To sort of encourage alternate ways of trying to think of how to solve these problems in just the least amount of steps possible. So that was our thing.
Awesome. Who wants to go next? Okay.
So you were looking at, after taking a while to pick a topic, we went with the agricultural revolution, partially the creative explosion with toolmaking, creativity, literacy, etc., etc. So a lot of our encounters are basically the players trying to figure out property, settlements, literacy, food storage, like all of the principles of the revolution that made it the revolution. So their abilities or their items are things that were at the disposal of the people at the time. So you had the ability to control fire, clay, starting to domesticate animals. So you have manure to make your crops, you keep all those seeds around and then grow food and then settle in one place, and everything just went from there. We were starting to get to modifiers, but it would end up kind of being something where you had two encounters at once. Someone just adds one to the mix. Something else that could happen that I just thought of now is someone could lay down a card that negates one of your item cards. So say you have a labor item card, someone puts down a disease card that negates your labor because they're dead. So someone has it, but if another player has like another labor card, then you're like, haha, mine are healthy. Sucker, nice try. So yeah, we didn't get that far because it took us a while, but that's what we have so far. Yay.
I like that double encounter mechanic.
That's actually where it initially came from. Then I decided I wanted to feel like the game was a little less a version of Munchkin. But yeah, that's a perfectly valid use of the challenge modifier.
Awesome. So last one.
Yeah, so we have a game that explores Romeo and Juliet, specifically the balcony scene. It's a very narrow game. It asks 5 questions about this scene, which is about as many as you can ask. Specific language. I don't know, should we like demo the game?
Yes,
our game, like, we made all the cards and we haven't tried it yet. It might work.
So, and we have 5 questions. We started off with the 5 journalistic W's: who, what, when, where, why. And then we couldn't come up with questions for some of them, so we doubled up. So we have, you have questions like, whose house is the scene set at? What flower does Juliet reference? Why can't Romeo and Juliet meet openly? And then we basically have various words on the cards, and from which the players construct sentences, like, what would one of the possible answers be? Possible correct answer.
The families hate each other, or
The
families
families
are
hate.
fighting.
Families are fighting, yeah. And we have various flowers in there, like rose
Yes.
and daisy.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think we or like we, I think we asked what are the full names of the characters? Like, oh, which one's a Montague and which one's a Capulet, right? So we have like Romeo cards and Juliet cards and Montague cards and Capulet cards, and I made a card that says Butt Love because that's in the scene. Call me Butt Love, he says. So that's his name. Right. So
Oh, I see what you did there. It was a different book that I read.
I don't know what school you went to, man. And so we're just challenging players. It's some sentence construction, some basic grammar, some recollection, and the like.
That's awesome.
Yay!
Yay! So our time is run over. But thank you everyone so much for coming. This is our contact information, Tomita Design, and then both our personal contact Twitter handle things. So still learning about Twitter. So thank you guys so much for coming. Huh?
Make a card game about it.
Make a card game about it, yeah. Exactly what I'm gonna do.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's gonna look pretty awesome, y'all.
Yeah, I should be.
So you can play put Y.
Yeah, so you guys like
And you're looking for, I guess,
our oil, like,
Say that more room for hashtags.
There used to be a website where you could go punch in a Twitter URL, and they would print it out and mail it to you. So you could get Twitter by mail.
why not?
Because it costs money.
But Twitter is so ephemeral and it scrolls away. It's a hard copy.
No, that's totally true though. I'll be in class and I'll get out of class and I'll be like, what did I miss? Like, I couldn't get 3 hours.
It looks like they're very I came over a couple times and like,
everything
it's like how good.
Well, that's the other thing is I had a personal account and I was using that for some professional networking stuff. And you know what? I want to talk about how angry I am with questions, but I also want to respect
So who are you really on Twitter?
Go ahead. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I could talk
well, wait.
We're like, I can't eat shooter.
Okay.
And especially in the library where
I did my MFA there, then I taught there.
All right.
I am Ninja Bunny. Yeah, bunnies hop like this, and they also.
Yeah, I don't get that. Anyway, let me eat this. Do you have a front? Alright, well, I'm gonna steal one of these and write your name on it.
I'm also Goku. The purple cat is such a funny character.
My name. You search for me. It is. I just.
Well, I'm on yes, excuse me, Cell defeated Goku. Alright.
That sparks the whole conversation.
It's okay. Goku is my favorite.
Yeah.
You know why Goku is my favorite? Because he eats a lot. But he also exercises a lot, so it works out.
I think so I'm like high interest in sort of education, but I don't think training, I guess. For a person like me, like if I do make something educational, I did make sure that in the best possible way for people to learn and not teaching anything wrong. Like I don't want to mess with the kids, I guess.
You're gonna train me to become a warrior? Alright. So I do this.
Oh, I just wasn't sure if
I do